Hello and welcome to my third match from the B division of the Dominion League against xyrix, a long-time friend of the channel. This is the feature game because it showcases an extremely powerful gainer in Dominion, the King of Piles, Stonemason, and also because both xyrix and I enter into an extremely tense endgame with a multitude of decisions to navigate that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Looking at the kingdom from the beginning, we have some plus actions here provided by Villa and Recruiter. Recruiter will give you villagers. We have some draw in Swashbuckler. We have some trashing provided by both Rats and Recruiter. Finally, and most critically, we have a heap of gain in this kingdom. Importer gains, Anvil gains, and the King of Piles, Stonemason gains. Additionally, Villa provides plus buy. The event Ferry is also critical in this kingdom because it combines well with all of the gainers. Ferry reduces the cost of an action pile by 2, and the allies Friendly and Cave Dwellers do come into play. Even the Artifact Treasure Chest comes into play in this kingdom. Now, the focal point here for this kingdom is the Groundskeeper. As is the case for most kingdoms with Groundskeeper, there are just too many points in that Groundskeeper pile for you to ignore, especially when combined with the plus buy and the gain in this kingdom. Groundskeeper will gain a lot of points for you very quickly. So how do we build that deck that can play a lot of Groundskeepers and also gain a lot of green cards? Well, xyrix starts off with a brilliant 5-2, quickly picks up the Recruiter. The Recruiter is an excellent card to open with. It draws a couple, it trashes an estate, gives you benefit for trashing the estate in the form of a couple actions that you can spend at your discretion. I didn't have the 5-2 outright, but thankfully we have 5 favors from the importer, and I was able to discard my starting estate to find a copper that allows me to hit 5 as well. Thank you, Cave Dwellers, for bringing some balance to the equation. xyrix discards a couple more with the Cave Dwellers, trashes out a card, a copper with their Recruiter, and also buys a second Recruiter. I will go ahead and also use my Cave Dwellers again here in an attempt to find either my Recruiter or to find 5 coin, in which case I can buy another Recruiter. xyrix uses their last 2 favors there, again probably to find the Recruiter to gain as much advantage as possible, especially as first player. They didn't find it, instead they bought an Anvil and they passed it back to me here. I opt not to use the Cave Dwellers here. I was happy with just the 1 Recruiter. If I had a very good turn, I would have found both and played both, but instead I have just a decent turn. I have 5 coin here. I could buy a Swashbuckler at this point. Instead, I opt for a Rats. I would like the Rats to trash out the coppers. Additionally, the Rats will draw a card while they trash the coppers, and once they finish trashing, I can use the Recruiter to get rid of them, draw a card, gain some actions, or maybe use Stonemason to trash them to gain cheaper cards like Anvils or other Stonemasons. 2 Recruiters and a Rats I feel is sufficient for me to help clean up this deck. And the reason why there's so much emphasis on trashing from my end is because of the multitude of gainers in this kingdom, again in combination with Ferry and the plus buy. I expect that the game will end very quickly because of a 3 pile somewhere. In that event, the deck with more control, the thinner deck, usually performs better, or at least gives you more options. So xyrix finds both their Recruiters trashing 2 estates, finds their Anvil as well, uses the Anvil to gain a Rats, and still has 4. That allows them to move their Ferry token over to Swashbuckler. Now their Anvil can also gain Swashbucklers. I trash an estate with my recruiter, gain a second rats. Rats will trash my final estate, and I also have 4. I could pick up an anvil here. Instead, I decided to get my fairy token on the swashbucklers. I don't think I have time for anvil, and I will soon have another gainer in my deck anyway. Rats comes out for xyrix, trashes an estate. No recruiter this time, which is good news for me. Anvil gains them a swashbuckler, and they move their fairy token over to the groundskeeper, the focal point for the deck. And xyrix agrees that groundskeeper should be the focal point for the deck. Also, by moving the fairy token, they have sort of said that for now they are content with just the one swashbuckler to get them through their deck. They'll likely include more later, but for now they say this is enough. I'd like to focus on getting the groundskeepers now. Again, I refrain from using my final 2 cave dweller favors here. I felt like 1 recruiter was enough to have a decent turn. I do play the recruiter. I could have trashed a copper. Instead, I chose to trash a rats. Draws me into another copper. I thought Villa was a good buy here. It's not as a terrible buy. This is much better. Stonemason overpay for 2 swashbucklers. Not only do I get 1 more swashbuckler than my opponent, I now have a gainer in the deck in the form of Stonemason. We could take a moment here to talk about the 2 gainers that we'll use for this game. Stonemason and Anvil. Anvil. The advantage of Anvil is that it doesn't require any actions to use Anvil. However, the disadvantages are Anvil requires you to have 1 extra stop card in your deck. You have to discard a treasure in order to use the Anvil. And also, Anvil gains less than Stonemason. On the other hand, the advantages of Stonemason are that it gains more, and it doesn't require the extra stop card that Anvil does. However, it does require an action to play. Let's see how we proceed from here. We both have different gainers. For now, let's see how it turns out. Recruiter, Rats, Recruiter, Swashbuckler draws xyrix, the whole deck. I'm feeling well and truly behind at this point. Here's their Anvil. Uses it to gain yet another Anvil. So 2 Anvils for xyrix, and they start in on the groundskeepers. Not looking good for me here. Rats first, Recruiter next. I don't find any other action cards, even though I have 2 swashbucklers in the deck. Instead, I just have enough money to move my fairy token over to the groundskeepers. I have 2 swashbucklers, my deck isn't that big. These 2 swashbucklers should draw me through the rest of my deck here. xyrix draws everything up once again, and they have the 2 anvils this time. They gain a 3rd anvil even with 1 of their present anvils. Let's see what the 2nd anvil gets. Probably a groundskeeper if I had to guess. No, it's a villa because they still have draw. So they restart their action phase, and only now do they play their 3rd anvil, which they gained this turn itself. They don't discard anything for that 3rd anvil, but instead buy a swashbuckler. Again, I don't need to use these favors here. I have so much draw in my hand. Start with the swashbuckler. I can either play the rats or trash the rats, and I do choose to trash the rats with the stonemason. Here comes my gainer, the stonemason. I will also gain an anvil and a groundskeeper. I have plans for that groundskeeper this turn, I'll show you. I chose to play the stonemason there on purpose because it allows this 2nd swashbuckler to gain me 1 coffer. The gold may be important, or maybe the coffer is important, we'll see. Rats trashes and also puts another rats in the deck. I'm not going to play this groundskeeper. This groundskeeper is going to stay in my hand. I have no intention of buying green cards. I do not need the draw. Instead, I will use the friendly trait to gain another groundskeeper here. Recruiter comes out just to find me some extra money, and well, the anvil especially. So I now use the anvil to gain a villa. I also return to my action phase here, but I don't draw anymore. I gain a couple of groundskeepers with the stonemason overpay because I had the extra coffer from that well-timed swashbuckler, and I'm going to gain another groundskeeper because of the friendly trait. So that turn I gained 4 groundskeepers, 1 of friendly, 2 of stonemason overpay, and 1 of a stonemason trash. Or over to xyrix now. They don't have any stonemasons, but they have a heap of anvils. They have 3 anvils. I'm not sure if they could use all 3 anvils though, but we'll see. They even use an anvil here to gain a stonemason because they've seen, well, stonemason is good. So now they have both the anvil and the stonemason. They have a lot of options for draw here. They get rid of one of their rats with the stonemason. That will allow them to pick up a couple groundskeepers, is my expectation. They do gain the 1 here. There goes the second one. They draw up the groundskeepers again, potentially making the friendly play to gain yet another groundskeeper. Here's another anvil. Discards an anvil for a groundskeeper. Friendly gains them a groundskeeper. So they also gain 4 groundskeepers on that turn. Rats now to populate the discard so that these swashbucklers will gain me coffers. I'll take all the extra money I could get right now. We get through until the end of the deck. I do trash one of the rats here with a recruiter I was running. A bit low on villagers is why I did that. I wasn't sure if I absolutely needed to do that, but I did. And here we reach a very interesting point in the game. I was looking for ways to end the game at this point, and I think here Tracer told me you were close. You could try to find the line that gets me close. I was 1 coin short apparently. I didn't see it at all. So instead I decided to keep building. Obviously I need the final recruiter to split those 5-5. I trash my final groundskeeper, sorry, to split those 5-5. I trash my recruiter with the stonemason to gain that final groundskeeper. I also gain a villa. It's plus buy, it's plus coin. Can be trashed later. Lots of reasons to get a villa there. I now play all these groundskeepers, and that might seem a bit strange because you might think, all right, I could play the stonemason, trash the rats, maybe gain an anvil or an importer. By the way, we've ignored importer because importer is just too slow here. At this point in the game, both xyrix and I are seeing all of our gainers, anvil and stonemason, every turn. We don't have time to wait for importer to go into play and then resolve on the next turn. Anyways, I was saying I could have trashed my rats with the stonemason to gain maybe a couple anvils or something, and then draw those up with the groundskeeper. But I have a different idea in mind here. xyrix's deck is quite good. And it may be possible for them to empty piles and win the game next turn. I'm not entirely sure. Stonemasons can disappear very quickly. The rats can disappear very quickly. So what I decided to do here was to make a points play. The groundskeepers had to go and play first in order to maximize that points play, because this rats will be transformed into a couple of estates at this point. Anvil gains me a 3rd estate, and I have the extra buy from the villa that I gained to go for 3 more estates. And very quickly I have 36 points, but now I have a much worse deck than my opponent. My reasoning for doing this is if I didn't do it, xyrix would have done it, and I would have been in a worse position with a worse deck. At least here I have some compensation in the form of plus 36 points over my opponent, and they cannot get that plus 36 points as easily because there are only 2 estates left. So let's see how xyrix responds, and you should take note of how xyrix responds because xyrix responds in the proper way. They get rid of their second recruiter for a couple of silvers. They trash our rats, gain some villagers, out comes all of their groundskeepers, and at this point you might be tempted to catch up on points because your opponent just went plus 36 on you, piles are getting very low. Maybe I should start getting points to either duchies or start taking estates or even provinces if I can afford them. No, this is not what xyrix does. You take the estates, you make it easier for me to end the game. You take the duchy, you don't catch up as quickly, and you make your deck worse. You don't allow yourself the opportunity to overtake and end the game all on the same turn. So xyrix fattens up on the treasure. They move their fairy token over to the swashbuckler, gain a couple more of those. They are hoping to increase the amount of treasure and reliability in their deck with the extra draw, because they know they need to get the extra points from either duchies or provinces, which are considerably more expensive than the estates. And they cannot touch the estates because it makes it easier for me to end the game. So now there are several ways for the game to end here on estates, stonemasons, villas, and swashbucklers. Those are the rats as well. Those are the piles you have to keep circulating in your mind. Can you coordinate? Can I coordinate a 3-pile before xyrix gets enough money to overtake me in points? All right, let's see how we go here. I use one of the cave dwellers now. I've held that for 9 turns so that I could potentially use it in a sticky situation. Drawing the second stonemason isn't great, but we'll work with it. At this point, you have to stop and think all the time. Should I trash the villa now to gain 2 estates? Should I trash the recruiter now to gain 2 villas? You have to keep on thinking. At this point, I didn't see much use in trashing either of those cards. I decide to draw further, find another groundskeeper, finds me a swashbuckler, which is nice, and then we end up here with no more draw. I decide to trash the villa. This will gain me the final 2 estates. I don't want to leave that for xyrix. Might open up a pile out for them here. I now have 41 extra points over my opponent. This second stonemason doesn't get to do anything. I could trash the anvil, but that'll only be into 2 stonemasons. Again, maybe that's right, because I don't think xyrix can gain 41 points in 1 turn here. So if I include the extra gainers in the form of the stonemason, maybe I can pile out over the course of 2 turns. So here, for example, trash the anvil, gain 2 stonemasons, and I have enough money to buy another stonemason. Please note that placing the fairy token on stonemason doesn't exactly at all let you pile out the stonemason pile. You cannot overpay 0 and pile out the stonemason pile. That doesn't work. I was explaining here, I can get 3 stonemasons by trashing anvil and by buying 1, so leaving 2 stonemasons in the deck. Maybe that was the way to go here, to be honest. Maybe. But I didn't want to do it like that. Instead, I buy a fairy and put it on the villas, trying to pile out the villa pile there, hopefully on the next turn. Maybe. I'm not sure. Anyways, if I left 3 stonemasons in the pile here, I would have needed 4 coin in order to pile out the stonemasons. And I wasn't sure I would be able to do that because I don't have very much money in the deck, and I just saw all of my gainers, 2 stonemasons and an anvil. So I wasn't confident that I would have been able to get the necessary resources to empty stonemasons if they were at 3, if I put them at 3. Alright, xyrix here. Groundskeeper, swashbuckler, stonemason populates the discard pile, so all their subsequent swashbucklers get coins. They gain more money, and they gain another rats. Here are all their groundskeepers. What can they manage? Here's another stonemason. Their second stonemason trashes a rats for swashbuckler. This time that pile is going down. They gain yet another swashbuckler. This is cheeky, but it works because I don't have any money to overpay to get 2 swashbucklers. That's 7 coin. And xyrix's turn comes to an end here. They move their fairy token over to the prince. I was surprised by this. I didn't expect them to use the prince to set aside an swashbuckler or a villa or anything like that. So I was a bit surprised to see the prince there. But again, note, no points bought from xyrix. The green cards make the deck worse, so it makes it harder for xyrix to catch up. Here, if I get 7, I win. I see that very clearly, but I also know you don't have money. How are you getting 7 coin? So we have 3 groundskeepers here. I choose not to play this rats instead. This is my last rats, so there's 1 resource that I won't have moving forward here. Trash the rats, gain a couple villas, that would allow me to get enough money for duchy if I want it, because I placed my ferry token on villa last turn to help enable our pile out. And at this point, the pile out is actually there. If you pause the video, you can think and try to find the pile out for yourself. However, from the length of this video, you probably know that I missed the pile out, because in all of these lines and all of these variations involving stonemason, I missed the very simple fact that you could just click villa 4 times and end the game here. I only looked at, well, I cannot stonemason overpay twice for villa, so instead, and I cannot overpay for the stonemasons to empty those. If I had a bit more money, I would have been able to do that, and I don't have enough money to stonemason overpay for the swashbucklers. So all the stonemason lines clouded my judgment, clouded my thought process, and I didn't see the villas just staring at me there. Even though I set it up for a villa pile out, I simply had the idea lost among all the stonemason lines, and my opponent is going to punish me severely for missing that. Look at what xyrix is able to pull off after a couple turns of setup here. After just a couple turns of setup, trashes a villa just to populate the discard, so their swashbucklers gain coffers. They have 8 of those, or 6 of those, so they will easily draw until the end of the deck. Here are all their groundskeepers in play. All of them are in play here, and now is the time to cash in. They gain a gold off the treasure chest. That is important because Villa allows xyrix to return now to the action phase, and the deck has a gold. They use the treasure chest a second time to gain a second gold, use the Villa to spin back into the action phase. This is a lot of movement here. They will eventually buy the Villa, of course, but first they get the ferry over onto the swashbucklers. They had it on the prince, they moved it onto the swashbucklers. That allows them to empty that pile. So the 3 piles are empty. How can xyrix gain 47 points? There's just no way, right? Wrong. There is a way, because groundskeeper is that good of a card. Again, Villa lets them return to the action phase. The deck now has 2 extra gold in it. Why am I talking about the 2 extra gold? Because those are not really gold. Those are secretly 2 duchies when a stonemason touches them. Each duchy is worth 8 points. The princes that I thought were to set aside action cards, again, were secretly not princes. They were just duchies in disguise. And xyrix is able to pile the duchies with 5 groundskeepers in play to overtake me in points quite comfortably, I might add, and win this game in spectacular fashion. Well done to xyrix. He played the endgame very, very well. Did not panic when he saw that he was so far behind. He understood that my deck was now limited in what it could do, and he had a couple turns to build up, targeted the duchy pile, and executed brilliantly. On the other hand, I played like 39 good moves and then messed up the 40th one. Was that chess adage? 1 bad move spoils 40 good ones? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.